We just talked about some of the really hard things.
Right, yeah, and by this point, I was really just kind of overwhelmed, reflecting on kind of the journey that I'd taken up to that point, with all of these disclosures, and just kind of where I was kind of landed, where it all landed in that moment of feeling unsafe and rejected in church. It's just a really overwhelming feeling that I did not know how to kind of get out of, and reground and start to feel safe again. And of course, everything from forgiveness to I need to process this more, to I should grieve more, to like maybe I need to speak up for myself more, to I need to talk this more out, like trying to just trying to kind of grasp at straws almost, as to how to get to a place again where I felt safe there. And then kind of in the back of my mind, it was like, well, I know I'm moving, I have to leave this ward. I know I'm moving out in July. So if nothing else, I can just kind of like white knuckle it, like, until I leave, and that was a really hard place to be. And so I was trying to like kind of reground in different ways. And at one point I got up and bore my testimony, and just talked about how I had been thinking a lot about the Savior, and I'd been thinking a lot about how he was a man of sorrow, acquainted with grief, and how much I could just relate to that, and without saying anything specific because I was afraid to say anything specific, but just grateful that I had the example of how he had navigated that in his life, and this insight into how you can continue forward when people don't understand who you are, or what you're trying to do, or they do not understand a part of your identity. They see it as something bad, or something you should hide or shouldn't say. And that felt somewhat empowering, and yet I still felt really sad. And at one point I went in and talked to a member of the stake presidency and just unloaded some of what I was feeling, just kind of, just to leave it somewhere and maybe hear some empathy around it. I didn't know what I wanted fully. I just knew that I was carrying something that felt too heavy to keep carrying, and it didn't feel right to keep carrying it, and that was somewhat cathartic. There was some empathy, and like, this is a problem in our culture, and you're probably going to run into this a lot. And maybe just focus on raising your kids and doing the best you can. And so there was some catharsis in that, and checking in with Kristen, knowing that there was somebody there who really was mindful of me. There was some comfort in that, but there was just never, I could never get back to a place of feeling safe and seen and valued in the way that I had in some of those moments, or that moment right after that big talk. And I don't know, what do you remember of that point?
That was close to when I was moving, right?
Yeah,
that was close to. I moved out of the ward, and I wondered, as that time neared, and I knew that Laura would also be moving out of the ward soon, and we lived in a ward that changed a lot. But I wondered, like, what's going to happen next in the ward. Like, it seemed like every week there was something, not big things, but some part of the dialogue or conversation that was still had to be processed and worked through with Laura. not just her individually, but whether it was dynamics with others or in the ward or someone else that she was disclosing to or whatever. And I had a lot of concerns for her at that point, because it did not feel like a safe environment. And that hurt that I was part of this community, this beautiful faith community, and we were not giving Laura the experience that we're capable of. I feel like members should be able to expect that level of safety and compassion with a sense of surety in our community, that's like the message of Christ, and that's what we are capable of as Latter-day Saints. And yet we were really struggling to deliver that for Laura, for someone we know well and are dear friends with. So if this is hard for us as a congregation, how are we going to get past this? How are we going to build this up so that members of our faith can expect this within our community? Because at this point, I'm now seeing how if I were sitting in Laura's place, I would seriously consider seeking comfort elsewhere. I'll stop you there. But for me, that's not an option. And I love the church. I love this community. It's because of the warmth and the beauty of the way I've always seen people show up for one another in the church as a young person growing up, that I wanted to have that same testimony. I wanted to have the Spirit. I wanted to, continue on in the path of the gospel. And so, and I have a testimony of every foundational, fundamental, essential element of the gospel, and so, there is no elsewhere. There is here.
Yeah.
There is here, and this is it. And how are we going to work this out? That's the question in my mind. The question has never been, let's go somewhere else, because in my mind, there's nowhere else I want to be. I want to be here. And so it's been kind of okay, so I just keep coming, and eventually I'm going to try to work this out. And that was my sense there. And I kept thinking, eventually I would reground and kind of recoup from it, maybe not even because anybody else changed, but because somehow I had learned to sit with it. But I wasn't able to do that as quickly as I would have hoped. As much as I was trying, and again, I'm reaching out to so many people. I have so many kind of skills or ways of coping with different things that I've learned along the way, and still I'm not regrounding in this space. And that's where I was at, I guess.